Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, Mom says it's too wet to play outside. We're talking rainy day games. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. How's it going, Mark?
It's going cozy.
We got a little cozy thing going on. Mark's wearing a hoodie, as per always. But we've got some tea or hot water with lemon. It's a little bit rainy and cold.
It's like if your grandmas were going to do a podcast, Nintendo podcast.
Let's start this over. We'll do it as our grandmas. This is your grandma's podcast, Nintendo podcast. Yes, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But we'll get into that in a second. The Nintendo Direct had us so distracted or blindsided that we had to blow through some of the things that we normally do. One of the things that we normally do is remind you that if you would like to borrow my copy of Sonic Forces, there may still be a chance for you to do this. May or may not. I haven't seen my copy of this game in a little bit. I sent it off. Hopefully it is coming back to me someday.
Maybe they're 100%ing it?
Maybe they're look, if anyone borrows my copy of Sonic Forces, gets it sent to their house, 100%'s the game, and then has no way to share that information with anyone. If you do that, it would be a feat.
Maybe it got lost in customs when it was like going across the border or something.
Maybe that's it. Whatever the case, if you would like to get on this list to borrow my copy of Sonic Forces, all you need to do is email your address to me. We are Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And I send it to you, and that's as easy as that. And then you send it back to me. Hopefully it is also as easy as that. Mark, let's get into what we've been playing this week. I know we finished talking about it, but I'm still playing Ocarina of Time.
Oh, okay.
On my 3DS.
Uh-huh.
I don't really have much more to add other than I finished the Spirit Temple and have just been sort of running around Hyrule, cleaning things up, touching base with all those great fairies, and getting that bottle that I was talking about, never knowing where it was. So yes, I'm continuing to play that game, and I still love it.
I finished Celeste this weekend.
Look at us wrapping stuff up.
Yeah. So I liked it a lot. I didn't use the assist mode at all until I got to the very end of the game.
Yes, well.
It was the first time ever that, like, I see a lot of people talking about how the Switch needs a proper D-pad.
Yeah.
And I had never experienced that for myself before. And then playing Celeste, I was like, oh, yes, now I get it. Because the analog stick was a little imprecise for me, and the 4-button directional pad was not cutting it.
It just doesn't feel right.
And so, I got to a point at the very end, like really, really, really close to the very end, and I just could not get past this one particular puzzle, and I was so frustrated that I was just like, whatever. And I turned on basically like invincibility in the assist mode and just like cruise through it and feel great about it. Because I think we talked about on the podcast before that I was getting the feeling that like the like individual chapters were a little long.
Yeah. And
some of the puzzle mechanics that they throw at you are just not fun at all. Like, there's wind that blows, and any level with wind in this game, I just wanted to die. And so, when I got towards the end of the game, I was ready for it to be over with.
Yeah.
I was not really, like, enjoying the challenge anymore, so when I hit my breaking point, to get to the end, I did not care that I used the assist mode.
Yeah, well, and the game is about failure, right? And about like learning to overcome failure.
Yes.
So I think as long as you get to a point where you are frustrated with it and then overcome it by whatever means, that you've experienced what the game has set out to make you experience.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. But I definitely hit a wall a few times.
That's a game that I would like to try to purchase with my Nintendo points, but I've got to cash in all those physical games.
I'm sorry to tell you.
I know they're worth almost nothing. I know.
And if they were released a year ago, they're literally worth nothing.
Well, how do they know when I bought it?
It's release date. It's not.
It's release
it's
date?
Release date.
What?
Yeah, it's not purchase date.
Oh, Nintendo.
Because that's how they get around. How do they know when you bought it?
What? Release date?
Yeah, release date.
Well, then I got to start registering some of those things like right now.
But I think you would really like this game.
Sure. So whether or not I'm spending gold coins on it,
it's worth it.
I could spend real honest money on it. I also played a little bit of the Kirby Star Allies demo. It seems cute and fun, and I'm gonna pick up the game on Friday. Had Sarah play through. This my girlfriend play through the first level, and she's trying to wrap her head around it. But like Kirby, Mario is her jam. Kirby seems a little different for her, but the game is cute enough that I mean, you watched her play a little bit.
Yeah.
As you walked in this evening. I am hopeful that it's a game that we can play together and not hate each other while doing.
For you playing through the demo, it definitely is cute and everything. Are you worried that there's not enough meat here? As a more experienced gamer, you drink gamer fuel and
right.
You live off of Doritos.
Right. I wear those glasses that are like the ionized things. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I still feel like we mentioned this on the last episode. We don't really know what like the substance of this game is.
Fair.
We've seen 2 levels, and I mean there could well be some really challenging or levels later on or interesting spaces to explore. But I mean, if it's just continuing to find new ways to like jam characters' powers together to like do cool stuff, maybe I'm okay with that. I could not believe how charmed I was the first time I made a friend in that game. Because like you turn this little like Joker enemy guy into your friend, and like his whole design changes, and he like goes up to Kirby and like they kind of nuzzle each other. It's adorable.
The game is very charming.
So I don't know. Feels like enough for me. Bring some joy into my life. Thank you, Nintendo. I also played the Splatoon 2 Splatfest this weekend. Not very far into it though. I think I ranked up 2 or 3 times in representing Team Egg. We were the losing team.
Yes, I also hopped in and was playing as Team Egg. We had to after we determined that the answer to the question chicken or egg is definitively egg.
Did you have you turned the game back on to see the results?
No.
So this is something that Marina brings up. She's like, biologically, evolutionarily speaking, the egg would have to come first.
I love it.
She made all the points that we did. So you and I'm saying, are basically Marina.
Put it in the book.
Put it in the book. We're the same as Marina. So it's sad that we lost. But I had fun playing Splatoon 2. I mostly got into it because I was excited about the Octo expansion that's coming out this summer. But I can see myself hopping back in and playing more just like here and there. I still love that like I can be away from that game for months and months, and then when I come back I don't feel like I'm drowning in it. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
People have new gear and stuff and there are levels I haven't been to, but like I can still win my first match back after 4 months. Also this weekend you and I got together to play Chrono Trigger. Now, we sort of did this, or part of the reason that I was like, I'm feeling Chrono Trigger was that the game was recently re-released on Steam, and it's sort of the phone port or sort of like an update of the phone version of that game, which is to say that it's a little bit of a mess, and like it's just not a great.
The internet was angered.
The internet was aflame, and so I was like, oh, that's a bummer. But Chrono Trigger, that's a good game. So Mark and I got together this weekend to play games, whatever, non-specific. But here's another thing that happened this last week. I picked up the Super NT, the Analog Super NT, which is a Super Nintendo / Super Famicom playing system that hooks up to your TV with an HDMI connection and allows you to play these games on a TV in 2018 that actually looks like it's supposed to look. I don't know if you've tried to hook up a Super Nintendo on a high definition television or a flat screen TV in the last 15 years, but it looks crazy. There's so much like just visual noise all the time, and this eliminates that.
Yeah, and it allows you to play, because like the Super NES Classic Edition is very close to the original, but it is emulation, so there are some like differences.
Yes.
This is just like playing on the original hardware, because it is the original hardware.
Yeah.
Just in a new form factor.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then it also means that you are able to, unlike the Super Nintendo Classic, you are able to use all of your old cartridges and play as many games as you. I'm making a list in my head of like cartridges that I need to get, including both Lost Vikings games. Have you ever played Lost Vikings?
No.
Oh, it's an early Blizzard game where there are these 3 Viking characters, and it's a side-scrolling game, and you play as all 3 of them. You just push select to switch between them, and like one of them can run and jump, another one has a shield, and like he can hold the shield above his head to like glide, and then the other one has a sword and a bow and arrow, and you have to switch between them. And like it ends up being like a cool puzzle platformer game. I really like the Lost Vikings games. They're super cool, and they've got all of that. Like, Blizzard is so good at imbuing characters with personality, and like all 3 of those characters are just like super cool, super compelling. But that's a Super Nintendo game that like, I would have liked to have my collection before, but like, what am I really gonna play it on? And now, Mark, I have an answer. It's the Super NT. But do we want to talk about Chrono Trigger here? Or I feel like Chrono Trigger is going to end up in our conversation about rainy day games.
Yes, it definitely inspired
yeah,
our conversation on rainy day games. So yeah, let's talk about it in the episode proper.
Yeah, so we'll save that a little bit for then. One other thing I wanted to mention about the Super NT is that it does come with 2 games preloaded on it. Super Turrican 2 and Super Turrican Director's Cut or Director's Edition or something like that. And I played a little bit of that. It is like a side-scrolling shoot 'em up Contra-esque kind of thing, with some really insane sprite work. Like the screen is just filled with amazingly detailed robots and bullets and stuff. What I've played is fun. I haven't really gone too deep into it, but I'm afraid that I might. Mark, I have one other thing for us before we get into rainy day conversations. Fodl, you remember Fodl?
Long-time listeners will remember Fodl.
Yes, as Fodl was our very first guest on maybe episode 3,
something like that, to
episode
talk about
5?
Luigi's
Mansion. He was on to talk about Luigi's Mansion, and Fodl, listens to this show, and he had a problem with my take on Faye. So, Fodl generously offered his opinion.
Dear Nintendo Cartridge Society, this is your first guest Fodl, here with a quick take on the video game Fee. I totally disagree with Patrick on what he thinks about the video game. I found the gameplay to be delightful. I really like the fact that there was no hand-holding. I agree that the scenery can be a little bit repetitive, but I actually enjoyed the subtle nuances of each of the different locations. And by the end of it, I grew to love the animals and the art and the general story behind the whole game. I highly recommend the game, and I give it about an 8.5 out of 10.
All right, so Fodl's rated the game an 8.5 out of 10.
Which we don't do on this show.
We do not do on the show.
But if we did, Fodl would rate it an 8.5 out of 10.
Right, and I guess Fodl can do whatever he wants.
Oh, fine. That's fair. As the first guest, he has
that's right,
veto power.
So I guess we'll go back in the book and change our review to I guess I kind of liked it. It does sort of make me want to go back and him saying that like he liked the direction of the story makes me sort of want to see it through to the end, but I don't know if it was feeling like grindy and boring for me, I probably don't want to subject myself to that again, right?
My answer is no.
No, okay. You hear that, Fodl? Mark's answer is no. We'll see. I'll wrestle with my inner demons and see where I land. Mark, let's get into our main topic, rainy day games. And we'll start with Chrono Trigger because that's where we were before we transitioned over to this. What do you think makes Chrono Trigger an effective rainy day? Like, why was it so right for a drizzly afternoon in Los Angeles?
For me, it's obviously nostalgia. It's
Sure.
that sense of like, I remember being a kid, it being rainy, hunkering down, playing Donkey Kong Country.
Sure.
And just that atmosphere makes me want to just have like the comfort food of games.
So that's interesting because I feel like both Donkey Kong Country, which I feel like is a good one, and for me, I'm sure a lot of the answer is going to be a lot of the same nostalgia. But both Donkey Kong Country and Chrono Trigger are like heavily atmospheric games. They both try to put you into an environment, and like there's weather in both of those games. Not like an active weather system, whatever, but like you move into a snow level and you're going to get a blizzard, or it rains in a level in Donkey Kong Country. And Chrono Trigger is similar in that like some areas you go to are like snowy, or there's always like clouds kind of passing above. You get a sense of the weather in the game. Do you think there's a connection between that and like experiencing weather outside? Am I grasping at something here?
I don't know. I mean, I do think it's the sense of atmosphere that that does contribute to it, because if we wanted just comfort food, we could play through Super Mario Brothers 3 all day every day. You know what I mean?
And we do quietly in our minds.
But when given the opportunity to, the first game that comes to mind when we talk about rainy day games for me is Donkey Kong Country, and I think it's the atmosphere. I mean, yes, I think it is tied to memories, but I think it's part of the reason it lives so large in my memory, because like the music, it like fits that sort of rainy day aesthetic.
Yeah, and I think there's also just something about like, I understand not all video games, many video games are about like escapism and not being in the environment that you're in. And I do think that Donkey Kong Country does one of the more effective jobs of like putting you in a jungle or a cave or a snowstorm. Maybe that's why I don't connect to Donkey Kong Country 2 that much.
You don't want to be inside a beehive?
I don't want to be inside a beehive or on a pirate ship.
Or like thorny brambles?
Yeah, in a bramble blast or whatever. I mean, our experience with that game is pretty well documented at this point. But it's something I'm sort of just realizing now, that like one of the things that I like about the original Donkey Kong Country is just being in that world. And like there's a notable dip for me in Donkey Kong Country when I get to the factory level.
Oh yeah.
Or when you're in like the polluted water. Like I genuinely think that that's worse game. And now that I'm thinking about it, is probably just because I don't want to be there. I like being in the jungle with my monkey friends. I don't like being at the gross factory with my monkey friends.
Yeah, I think
I'm
that's
learning
true.
something about myself today.
I think that is true of Chrono Trigger as well. So we were playing Chrono Trigger for a few hours.
Yeah.
And it was getting late into the night, but neither of us wanted to finish when we were in the future.
Yes.
The like depressing, toxic, arid future.
That's right.
We wanted to wait until we got back to like the comforting what is it?
Yeah, to the present.
1000 AD or whatever.
The year 1000. We were stuck in 2300 for a while. It happens. It's post the end of the world in the timeline of that game. But yeah, it's very interesting that what we were driving towards was just like that sense of comfort, both from like a nostalgia perspective, but also just like aesthetically. We wanted to be comforted. Do you think that because I was trying to come up with like a list of other, when we don't really have like a list here, right? We don't. These aren't our top 5 rainy day games.
We're not like duking it out for the definitive rainy day game.
Even though that makes for very strong episodes. This is going to be one of the weaker episodes. I apologize. But still a very good one. Do you think that exploration, or like, do you think that that's a big part? Like, I don't really think of, I'm a big fighting game guy. I don't really think of Street Fighter as like a rainy day game. Even though
it's too aggressive.
Yeah, it is too aggressive. But I mean, it's not like Donkey Kong Country has no action in it. You know, it's an action platformer. And also, this is weird and very specific to me, but my father and I used to go camping at the Wisconsin Dells campgrounds a lot when I was a kid. Like every summer, we would go like 2 or 3 times, and we had frequently had just like the worst luck with the weather, and it would rain. And so instead of going hiking and doing stuff at the Dells, we would end up in arcades, and that's where I learned to play Street Fighter, was in arcades with like some guy beating up my Chun-Li because I didn't know what to do other than push kick as fast as I could. And so like a lot of my formative memories with Street Fighter are related to rain, but I don't think of it as a rainy day game. So it's not just like that connected wire. There is something about like the actual experience of the game that makes it feel more like a rainy day game. And I just don't know what that is. I want to figure it out. Like let's put some games up and see like if they pass the rainy day test.
Sure. I mean, I think for each person they're going to be a little bit different, because like another one that comes to mind for me is A Boy and His Blob, The Rescue of Princess Blobette
on the
Game Boy. And the reason that is because it's a game I remember playing a lot as a kid, even though I couldn't beat it, just putting like so much time into it. I remember like, being in my room, it being overcast outside, you're like covered in a blanket, and just like putting time into it. Like that's the sort of thing that I go to when I'm thinking of like games, cozy games.
So putting time into it is interesting, right? Like there is an element of you're a little bit more willing to engage with the boredom, right? Or like with the grind of something. I associate so many rainy days with just like grinding out, the last like set of magic spells in like Final Fantasy VI or something. Just in that same little area of the desert where all you fight are cactars and hoovers, just over and over again. Yeah, so like it's interesting that boredom can be like a component of it, that like you almost want a game that
you're familiar with.
Yeah.
That like it's rainy days are not a day to like forge ahead into unknown territory.
Right. So it is a little bit exploring, but not exploring something new. Yeah, that's so interesting, because like I also don't think of like puzzle games. If it's raining outside, I don't want to play like Puyo Tetris or Dr. Mario or something. Games that I love, but like, yeah, for whatever reason, I just want it to be like more experiential. I want to be in a space and like see what's there. I wanted to put forth Mario 64 to see if it passes the test. I want to see maybe how late in time we can go, because so far we're on Game Boy and Super Nintendo, right? Is there a Nintendo 64 game that we think fits the bill for rainy day game? And is that game Super Mario 64? Do you think that passes the test for you?
I think Mario 64 passes the test.
Yeah.
It's a game where, again, like especially when you're a kid, and I never got, what is it, like all 120 stars.
Oh, never?
No, I like, and so there was always so much more of that game to explore.
Yeah, sure. My mind is going to, I think it works for me too. I have 120 starred Mario 64, but it's also just such comfort food that I think it works for me. I think Majora's Mask may be a perfect rainy day game. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Because it has so many like you're doing this again. You're like, it's built into how the game works and how progression works. That you're repeating the same things over and over again, and it's also an incredibly moody game.
Yeah, it checks that atmospheric box.
Yeah, absolutely. That might be perfect. I may have just come up with the perfect rainy day game, and we should just stop right now. Can you think of another like Nintendo 64 one that you think works for you?
No, not really. I feel like that was like atmosphere is something that, in my opinion, was missing from a lot of N64 games.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And fog doesn't count really because it was everywhere,
Right.
You know,
Burn Superman 64. Mark's coming out swinging. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and I worry about like going any further in like Nintendo history or like closer to now, just because I feel like, I don't know, our relationship to video games changes as we, leave high school and all of that, and also just sort of around the turn of the century too, we start like just playing more games, so you're not really sinking unlimited hours into one game. I don't know. Any other thoughts about rainy day games?
it's so rare in LA.
Yes.
When you have the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's just something very comforting about it.
About the rainy day?
Yeah, and about like going back to those things that you loved and still love.
I also I like, maybe what part of that is that you're like, well, it's a rainy day, I can't go out, which is a very LA thing, and I know, whatever. But when it rains, you're like, I don't know, it's going to take forever to drive somewhere.
It's like being a kid again when you didn't have the option of going somewhere.
Exactly. You're like, well, I can't go to the swing set, so I may as well play Donkey Kong Country again. All right, Mark, that was a fun conversation. Let's close out this topic. And that's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. If you enjoyed it, you can rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff on Apple Podcasts. We would love to hear your rainy day games because, we only had a handful, and we're not really sure that we drilled down into why we like them when it's raining.
Well, and I feel like it's one of those things that it's just going to be based on everybody's individual experiences.
Probably true, yeah.
Maybe you had a Sega Genesis as a kid.
What? What are you going to play Altered Beast when it
rains?
rains?
A Dreamcast. I would love to hear somebody's rainy day Dreamcast game.
No, I had a Dreamcast. I played it a lot when it was raining. I don't know that I have one for that, though. I just play Power Stone again. Anyway, we would love to hear all of that. You can send an email to Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. Or you can hit us up on Twitter. We are at NinCart Society. And on Facebook, we are just Nintendo Cartridge Society. If you want to follow Mark and I individually on Twitter, I am at Patrick_Ellers, and Mark is at MKE Mitchell. If you like Mark and Mine's opinions, you can check out our comic book reviews and discussions on retconpunch.com. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can check out his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying, thanks for listening.
Campfire.